Welcome to the Healthy Compulsive Project podcast, where you can take a deep dive to explore the pitfalls and potential of the obsessive-compulsive personality, offering hope and help for perfectionists, workaholics, micromanagers, type A personality, and control freaks. Hello, everyone. Gary Trosclair here, psychotherapist, Jungian psychoanalyst, and author of the Healthy Compulsive Project book, blog, and podcast. The common but unrecognized disease of obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, also known as OCPD, has a long and inglorious history. Though they didn't call it OCPD 3,000 years ago, they would have called it hubris, because if someone believed they knew everything and they had the gall to try to control everything, they'd say he's a few fries short of a Happy Meal. But they also had someone that helped them with this condition. She was called Ananke, the goddess of compulsion and fate, and when people recognized her, they chilled out and let go of their fantasies of control. But while today we might be familiar with Zeus, Apollo, and Dionysius, we are oblivious to Ananke and the limits she imposes. But these limits don't go away, and in our efforts to avoid them, we become diseased. So, join me for episode 100 of the Healthy Compulsive Project podcast, How a Goddess Became a Modern Disease, Ananke, OCPD, and the Need for Control. Carl Jung famously wrote that the gods have become diseases. What he meant was that because we no longer consciously acknowledge the powerful forces we used to call gods and goddesses, they've gone underground and manifest in our physical and mental ailments. However unbelievable they might seem, they are still forces to be reckoned with. Such is certainly the case with the Greek goddess Ananke. Who? My point exactly. We don't recognize her because she doesn't fit in with our need for control. So who is Ananke? The goddess of fate, inevitability, and compulsion. The common but unrecognized disease of obsessive-compulsive personality disorder has a long and inglorious history. Though they didn't call it that 3,000 years ago, they would have called it hubris, because if someone believed they knew everything and had the gall to try to control everything, they would have said he was a few fries short of a Happy Meal. But they also had someone that helped them with their need for control. She was called Ananke, the goddess of necessity, compulsion, and fate. They personified this force as a goddess stronger than all other forces. When people recognized her and paid heed to her, they chilled out and let go of their fantasies of control, because you can't mess with Ananke. Nobody did. They realized that we can't override her with personal control, no matter how hard we try. But while we might be familiar with Zeus, Apollo, and Dionysius, today we are oblivious to Ananke and the limits she imposes. But these limits don't go away. And in our efforts to avoid them, we become diseased. Ananke determines aspects of the world outside of us and inside of us. The outer issues are more obvious: death, illness, natural disasters, obligations, traffic, subway delays, clueless people, and recalcitrant children. But when we try to resist these inevitable aspects of outer life, Ananke takes over our inner life too. Our need to control the uncontrollable makes us compulsive in the worst sense, so much so that we actually develop an illness. It's like thinking you can eat as many Cinnabon rolls, key lime slime Twinkies, yes, they're a thing, and pints of Ben & Jerry's Chubby Hubby ice cream as you want and not suffer any consequences. Or, to bring this back down to earth, if we imagine that we can needlessly boss other people around, work 100 hours a week, or live entirely via perfectly pleasing people without suffering consequences, we are living in La La Land. When we are unaware of Ananke and what she represents, we become like her in the worst way. She set the laws that govern existence, and with our need for control, we try to do the same. Our modern disease: OCPD, compulsive personality, and the need for control. We don't much like Ananke these days. We modern folk like to believe that we can control everything and don't like giving it away to her. This is particularly true in American culture, and it's even more true of people who are unhealthily compulsive, those who are especially and infamously controlling. They like to think that if they work, plan, obsess, rush, harangue, or tailgate enough, they can make things happen in the outer world the way they should happen. Mixed results ensue, quite simply because we can't control everything. Those who ignore Ananke, those who cannot accept that some things are out of their control and try to take control, end up losing control to the need to control. They become compulsive in their efforts to deny her. They think they're driving, but they are actually being driven by Ananke. Without realizing it, they try to become her. This is how the goddess became a disease. The medical term for this disease is obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, or OCPD, which is the most frequently occurring of the 10 personality disorders in the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. There are many reasons why people develop OCPD, but one of the most common is that natural and healthy tendencies to be driven and hardworking are hijacked to avoid the feelings that would otherwise come with acknowledging limits. Anakin Skywalker denies Ananke and becomes Darth Vader. I can think of no better example of trying to shun Ananke than the characters from Star Wars, young Anakin Skywalker and the sinister adult he later becomes, Darth Vader. Star Wars is our contemporary mythology. It lays bare our culture's attempts to control. If you don't see the prequels, you might not know what's behind all this. At 6 years old, Anakin Skywalker is a very promising young boy, ambitious and talented to an extreme. He's recruited to be a Jedi warrior and has to leave his home and his mother. Later, after he's been away training for some years, his mother is captured and tortured. He tries to rescue her but arrives just in time to see her die. Devastated that he couldn't save her, he takes his skill to the dark side, eventually becoming Darth Vader, with the promise that he will be able to keep his wife from ever dying. He doesn't mourn the loss of his mother and his limitations, but instead tries to take over the galaxy. He'll stop at nothing to do so. He ends up indirectly bringing about the very thing he fears. His wife dies just after giving birth. Some say she died as the result of her broken heart from Anakin turning to the dark side. This transformation is not unusual for people who are born talented and driven. Their skills are hijacked to try to cope with their fears of facing into disturbing feelings, especially fears about not meeting the expectations that came with being talented. Genes, compulsion, and fate. Ananke rules more of our fate than just death. She also determines the biological limits of life and the needs that all humans have, including the need to eat, sleep, drink, and procreate. Your constitution also includes personality traits specific to you, who you are naturally, your strengths and calling, which is partially the result of your genes. No matter how sincere your parents were when they told you that you could do anything you wanted to do and be anything you wanted to be, they were wrong. For instance, people who are naturally compulsive, driven, perfectionistic, and conscientious will never become laid back, and that can be a good thing if you recognize it and work with it. Befriending Ananke, working with compulsion. The Greeks personified forces such as Ananke so that they could recognize and come to terms with them. Naming something limits its power. Once you can identify such a force, you know who or what you're dealing with, and you can make the necessary accommodations. The standard response in their time was to burn incense, slaughter a lamb, or make some other sort of sacrifice to save their soul from an ignoble fate. These rituals might seem ridiculous to us today, but they fostered an attitude of acceptance that is psychologically adaptive. We have other options now. If we can acknowledge that we're not completely free, we actually become freer to deal with the limitations of both the outer world and the inner world in a more mindful and constructive way. You can't defy death, even with the will and courage of a Jedi, but you can slow down enough to savor your life and your loved ones. You can't force yourself or anyone else to do everything exactly the way you think it should be done, but you can do your best to live with integrity and meaning. And if you're constitutionally driven, you do need to work, produce, create, and fix, but you don't have to go crazy doing it. Recognizing Ananke can save you a lot of trouble. The next time you feel yourself compelled to try to achieve the impossible, that is, be perfect, change other people, or control the future, recognize that there's much that's out of your control and face the feelings that you've been trying to avoid by being so controlling. None of this is to say that we should roll over and give up or not stand up for ourselves or what we believe is right. We do have some control and we can make the world a better place. But when we see our limits and let go of our need to control, we're better prepared to accomplish what is within our control. You can find transcripts of this podcast with links to research sources and lots more at the Healthy Compulsive blog, www.thehealthycompulsive.com. If you'd like to subscribe to the Healthy Compulsive podcast, hit that subscribe button. And for a thorough guide to cultivating the positive potential of the compulsive personality, find my book on Amazon, The Healthy Compulsive, Healing Obsessive-Compulsive Personality Disorder and Taking the Wheel of the Driven Personality. And if you find any of these helpful, let others know by leaving a review. Till next time, enjoy the drive.